everybody, Gina DeLuca here. All right, so in the last painting I used these colors, but I had used an old jar of satin enamel and I didn't get quite the cell action that I typically do. It did still sell, but the cells were different than how they usually turn out. So I added a bit more of satin enamel to these paints from a fresh jar. And so we're going to see how that goes. They are a little bit lighter now than they were in the last painting because I added more white to it. But we're going to see what happens. We're going to do a traveling straight pour, moving straight pour, however you want to call that. The colors that we are working with. For the background / base coat, I have Amsterdam and Permanent Blue Violet, and that is all that is in here. Well, and Floetrol, but that's the only color that is in the background / base coat. All of these other colors have been mixed 50% satin enamel with the other color. So I have Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue for this here. The Cadmium Yellow Light Hue will sell when used with these other colors. That will sell on its own, but the Deep Hue does not. So I wanted it to have the same kind of cell structure. It does give a different cell structure than the satin enamel, and I wanted that to be more uniform. So I used the Deep Hue and added the satin enamel to that. This color is a mix of the Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue and the Cadmium Red Medium Hue. This is, oh, I didn't pull that out. This is Quinacridone Magenta, also from Liquitex Basics. This is the Permanent Blue Violet. This is Phthalo Blue. And then we have Phthalo Green. And again, these have all been mixed, half colored paint, half satin enamel. And then the Floetrol is added to that. I do 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part paint. You can do 3 parts Floetrol as well. That will still work for you. The consistency that we are working with. This is about a 2 on my consistency scale. It is making a mound, but it disappears quickly. And it's making a nice, thin, even stream off of my stick. Oh, cats are chasing each other. If it gets thick and then thin and then thick again, they got the zoomies, then your consistency is inconsistent and you need to continue with your mixing. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that will give you all of the information that you need, the exact paint, brand, color, consistency, the recipe, the technique, of course, all of the things that I cannot fit onto a card. This is a picture of the painting in that particular video. This box here contains a tip for this technique, and here at the bottom you have the color palette that was used in this painting. And these 2 boxes can be used together as the basis of a 2-color palette. You can do 2 colors, you can add to those colors. And there are also 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors or just some of the colors, mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is put some paint in my cup. This is my background color. This is the color that will not be selling up. I like to use the same color for my base coat as my background. I like to use the same color for my base coat as I do my background. And my reason for that is if there are going to be bubbles coming up from the base coat, I want it to be a color that is part of the painting, first of all. But if I use the same color as my background, that gives me the option for negative space. Sometimes very cool things happen on the edges of a pour puddle, particularly for a straight pour. And I like to keep as many options open for my composition as possible. The reason we lay down a base coat is because we want the paint to slide around evenly and easily. Something has to stick to the canvas first. If it is not your base coat, it will be your poured puddle. And the center of the puddle will roll over the edges of the puddle. And that can kind of limit your composition, because once again, some of the coolest stuff can happen on the edges. The reason I painted the edges of this canvas first is because mixing for a straight pour is pretty thin, and I'm using Floetrol. That does not give the best coverage on the sides. So I like to make sure they are fully covered before I do anything, so that I don't have to come back and do anything to fix it later. If your edges don't look fantastic, then either you have to come back and touch them up, or you'll have to frame it. All right, my base coat is down. Going to pop these bubbles. When you light your torch, make sure that you are not doing it directly over your painting. The first blast is actually really hot, and you can scorch your painting. We don't want that. All right, let's put some paint in a cup. Be sure to check your consistency before adding to your cup. The sauce may thicken upon standing. I'm going to do about 1 ounce of each of these colors. Oh, that one thickened up a hair. So let's add some water. All right, now for the blue. The purple. And the magenta. This is going to be a lot of paint. It is very hard for me to pour just 1 ounce. Now for the yellow, I like to put the color that has the most contrast with my background color in last. Typically, that ends up at the bottom of the cup. When I'm doing 1 ounce, it's kind of hard to get it at the bottom of the cup. So I don't know if it's going to make it down there. And I'm just gonna, since most of the color on top here is actually the purple, I don't really need to add to the top. Oh, right, I see some cells popping up, so that is a good sign that that this will be reacting the way that I like it to. All right, so I'm going to start on one side, and I'm going to kind of do some S's here and see what kind of pattern this is going to give me. I'm kind of going back in between where I already went. All right. You know, one of the cool things about this medium is like how you load the cup is going to change things. How it comes out of the cup. You know, if you do an S, if you do a wiggle this way, it all changes the patterns and the way that the cells are going to come out. Will the cells blend together? Will they be separate? When I do the sink and churn the way that I do, I have a tendency to get, oh, Tucker, what are you doing? Oh, this cat. The places that he gets into. What was I saying? Oh, right. So when you do the sink and churn, you get blending of cells. You get a blending of the colors. Whereas if you were to do layers, then you would get more concentrated colors. I like when the cells blend together. So this part, we have to be patient. We have to let the paint puddle percolate. If I let these cells develop before I tilt, I will get bigger cells. Let the cells develop first and then stretch them and you will get bigger cells. That's how I get the bolder cells. But if I were to tilt this right now, I would still get cells. Cells will still come up. The satin enamel is just like that. But I like to maximize my cell size by giving the cells a chance to grow before I tilt. And you'll see, every time I pop these bubbles, more cells come up. It's pulling them up from the layers underneath, and it is bringing paint with it. The matte paints have a tendency to create cells when they are used with a glossy paint or glossier paint. Doesn't have to be a gloss paint. Doesn't have to be a full matte paint. It can be a satin paint with a glossier paint. Even within a particular paint line like Basics, the purple, the dioxazine purple dries glossy, and the cadmium yellow light hue dries matte. So that was when I discovered the straight pour. It was an accident, and I had used the cadmium yellow light hue, got some crazy cells, and then did another painting and got the first bolder cells. And when they dried, I noticed that these cells were matte in comparison to the background, to the parts that didn't sell. And so I went on a scientific journey. I did swatches of every paint that I had. I found the ones that were glossy and the ones that were matte, and I used them together. And almost all of the time, I will get cells when I use a matte with a gloss, or just glossier. Doesn't have to be gloss, full gloss, just glossier. Okay, so I'm still not getting the typical cell reaction that I get. So, you know, I used, again, an older jar of the satin enamel. I did add some fresh satin enamel to it, but, you know, it wasn't fully fresh. So I'm not going to get the exact same effect with that older satin enamel in there, it seems. But I will still get plenty of cells. All of these cells are going to continue to get bigger, and yeah, it'll continue to grow. We'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires here as time goes on. The last painting that I did didn't look like it was going to get a whole lot of cells, but it did. So that is the nature of satin enamels. You know, maybe they're not jumping out as quickly as they usually do, but they will be there. Have faith. Gotta have faith. Trust the process. This is a lot of paint. I'm going to have to tilt a lot of this paint off. That is just the nature. You know, you don't want to waste paint. However, sometimes, you know, you have to crack an egg to make an omelet. You need to use enough paint so that you can control your composition. And yes, I am using, some paint is going to get dumped off, but particularly for this canvas, you know, this oblong canvas, you really do have to use enough paint to be able to cover the whole thing. And even though I will be, you know, having to tilt some off, I am still pretty careful about how much I use. I don't like to be wasteful. And I do my best to measure out how much I need. The way to do that, find out your square inches. Length times width in inches. And then, whatever number that is, divide that by 28. If you're using a really big canvas, I would divide that by 24 because big canvases are very, very thirsty, and you will actually wind up using more paint than you think you will. So length times width, divide by 28, and the number that you are left with is how many ounces you will need. I do not know what the formula is for metric. Sorry, I'm a typical American in that way. I do not know the metrics. So the edges here, the sides, can set up, and we want to make sure that they are evenly lubricated so that the paint slides over at the same rate. If there is a dry spot on the side, it will resist the paint sliding over easily. And we certainly don't want that. The corners can also set up a bit. It's always the corners that set up first, it seems. So I like to give a little extra love there before I start tilting. Let's see, we're looking over here a little bit more. All right. All right, going to give this one more pop. All right, let's give this a tilt. This shape of canvas definitely is a little trickier when it comes to tilting. So I like to bring the weight of the paint back to center before I change directions, and that helps me to maintain my composition, and it helps me to maintain my cell shapes. The weight of the paint is going to be where it's moving fastest. All right, now there's still a lot of paint on here, and I'm going to use the weight of the paint to decide what area or areas will be getting tilted off. I'm going to stretch in either direction a bit. And the more I stretch, typically, the more cells pop up. So sometimes even just moving it around a little bit can help to make more cells. You don't have to move it around a lot. But certainly the more you stretch, the more cells you get. And I'm just kind of trying to adjust my composition a little bit here. All right. So, a lot of cells down here. Awesome. More cells will pop up here, I believe. I have faith. I'm pretty sure that will happen. I am going to give it another torch down on that end. hands a bit. All right, I'm not going to torch this end. I have enough cells happening here. Not worried about it. So I'm going to let these cells develop. I'm gonna see what they do. And I will bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. No shortage of cells on this one. It's starting to dry on the edge, so you can see how that dries, which is pretty much exactly how it looks when it's wet. But there it is, cells within cells, tons of cells. Now we know what pouring in that pattern will give us. Oh, Tucker is all up in the shelves. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. Help a sister stay in the algo. If you are subscribed, please make sure you have clicked that bell so you receive notifications when I have new uploads. Less than 1% of my views are coming from my subscribers. Something is amiss, so please make sure you've clicked that bell. Do check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined, my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and the fluid art inspiration cards for sale, my affiliate links and coupon codes. Grab yourself some of these DecoArt paints at a discount by using the coupon code in the description box. What else is in there? Oh, our Facebook group. You'll find the link for that. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. It is the internet after all. Got some cool sales going on in here. All right. I think that's it. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.